yourself 10 years from now. If you set aside 5,000 pesos per month 10 years ago without investing it, you would easily have 600,000 pesos today. Today, you're looking forward to your new car, new house, or a dream vacation. Because of inflation, your purchasing power for that 600,000 pesos would actually be worth a lot less today. But if you invested your money in a mutual fund, not only would you have maintained your money's purchasing power, your money would be worth more today. For information, visit the FAMI website. Picture yourself 10 years from now. If you set aside 5,000 pesos per month 10 years ago without investing it, you would easily have 600,000 pesos today. Today, you're looking forward to your new car, new house, or a dream vacation. Because of inflation, your purchasing power for that 600,000 pesos would actually be worth a lot less today. But if you invested your money in a mutual fund, not only would you have maintained your money's purchasing power, your money would be worth more today. For information, visit the FAMI website.
In order to make our 2020 annual shareholders meeting event as successful and smooth-flowing as possible, we need your full cooperation and adherence to the following guidelines. This ASM is being recorded. Attendance's video and microphones are disabled by the host during the session to avoid interruptions. Due to logistical limitations of the meeting conducted virtually, open forum or discussion will not be possible during the meeting. However, stockholders may raise any relevant questions limited to the annual report by sending an email to asm@fami.com.ph. Any relevant questions or comment received via email shall be properly acknowledged, noted, and addressed accordingly. Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for guidance, wisdom, and support as we gather once again for the annual stockholders meeting. Help us to engage in a meaningful discussion. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make right decisions, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit for the greater glory of God. May your goodness and love be present amongst us today. Come bless our academy, our board of directors, our president, the officers, the FAMI family, our partners, and our shareholders with unity, hope, and vision. We ask these things in your most holy name. Amen.
Lord.
Welcome everyone to the 2020 First Metro Asset Management's Annual Stockholders Meeting of Mutual Funds. Present on this event are the Board of Directors of First Metro Save and Learn Philippine Index Fund Incorporated, First Metro Consumer Fund on MSCI Philippines in IMI Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Equity Fund Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Fixed Income Fund Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Balanced Fund Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Money Market Fund Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Dollar Bond Fund Incorporated, and First Metro Asia Focus Equity Fund Incorporated. May we now call on Brother Manny V. De Leon to start with our call to order with our agenda. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Chairman of First Metro Save and Learn Philippine Index Fund Incorporated, Mr. Michael G. Say, First Metro Consumer Fund on MSCI Philippines IMI Incorporated, Mr. Eduardo S. Menjola, and First Metro Save and Learn Money Market Fund, Ms. Helen U. Fargas. Good afternoon and welcome to the year 2020 Joint Annual Stockholders Meeting of the following FAMI funds. First Metro Save and Learn Philippine Index Fund Incorporated or SALFIN, First Metro Consumer Fund on MSCI Philippines IMI Incorporated, FMCI, First Metro Save and Learn Equity Fund Incorporated or SALEF, First Metro Save and Learn Fixed Income Fund Incorporated or SALFIF, First Metro Save and Learn Balanced Fund Incorporated or SALBAF, First Metro Save and Learn Money Market Fund Incorporated as SALMAF, First Metro Save and Learn Dollar Bond Fund as SALDIBAF, First Metro Asia Focus Equity Funds Incorporated as FAMAFEF. For the purpose of this meeting, SALFIN, FMCF, SALEF, SALFIF, SALBAF, SALMAF, SALDABAF, and IMAFEF shall be collectively referred to as FAMI funds. In view of the ongoing pandemic situation and the implementation of the community quarantine, the FAMI funds are unable to conduct this year's annual stockholders meeting physically. Instead, our meeting shall be via remote communication with the stockholders participating by electronic means pursuant to the rules of the Securities and Exchange Commission. The meeting will now please come to order. We now go to the certification of notice and quorum. We request the respective chairman of each of the funds to determine if there is a quorum. Mr. Michael Say.
Yes. Yes, I certify there's a quorum of the meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Attorney Miller.
For Salfin, Mr. Chairman, the required notices were duly sent. This is to certify that the notice for the 2020 annual stockholders meeting was published to notify the stockholders of record in the business section of Manila Times and Manila Standard on August 25 and August 26, 2020, in print and online format, and in FAMI and the company's website in accordance with SEC regulations. There are now actually present in person or represented by their proxies by remote communication 52,675,821 common shares out of the 81,279,177 common shares outstanding as of record date on August 7, 2020. These constitute 64.81% of the outstanding capital stock and we therefore have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Menjola, please.
Mr. Secretary, Ms. Secretary, have you sent the notice to the stockholders of FMCF? And is there a quorum for this meeting?
Mr. Chairman, the required notices were duly sent. This is to certify that the notice for the 2020 annual stockholders meeting was published, to notify the stockholders of record in the business section of Manila Times and Manila Standard on August 25 and 26, 2020, in print and online format, and in FAMI and in the company's website in accordance with the SEC regulations. There are actually present in person or by proxy, by remote communication, 396,888,845 common shares out of the 580,732,714 common shares outstanding as of the record date on August 7, 2020. These constitute 68.34% of the outstanding capital stock.
Ms. Secretary, have you sent the notice of the stockholders of First Metro Save and Learn Equity Fund Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Fixed Income Fund Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Balance Fund Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Money Market Fund Incorporated, First Metro Save and Learn Dollar Bond Fund Incorporated, First Metro Asia Focus Equity Fund Incorporated? And is there a quorum for this meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the required notices were duly sent, and this is to certify that the notices for the 2020 annual stockholders meeting were also published in the business sections of Manila Times and Manila Standard on August 25 and August 26, 2020, in print and in online format, and in the FAMI and the company's website in accordance with the SEC regulations. There are actually present in person or represented by their proxies by remote communication as follows. For SALEF, 421,619,265 common shares out of the 800,690,708 common shares outstanding as of the record date on August 7, 2020. These constitute 52.33% of the outstanding capital stock. For SALFIP, we have 480,599,267 common shares out of the 735,206,991 common shares outstanding as of record date on August 7, 2020. These constitute 64.75% of the outstanding capital stock. For SALBAF, we have 317,416,127 common shares out of the 586,329,235 common shares outstanding as of record date on August 7, 2020. This constitutes 54.14% of the outstanding capital stock. For the money market fund, we have 456,759,342 common shares out of the 557,292,398 common shares outstanding as of record date on August 7, 2020. These constitute 81.96% of the outstanding capital stock. For the dollar bond fund, we have 317,218,020 common shares out of the 332,078,571 common shares outstanding as of record date on August 7, 2020. These constitute 95.52% of the outstanding capital stock. For the Asia Focus Equity Fund, we have 2,127,660 common shares out of the 2,126,000 7,660 common shares outstanding as of record date of August 7, 2020, and these constitute 100% of the outstanding capital stock. We therefore have a quorum for each of the said funds, Mr. Chairman.
There being the required quorum for all the FAMI funds, this joint meeting is therefore duly constituted for the transactions of the business in the funds, respective agenda. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the stockholders meeting of the FAMI funds held on June 19, 2019. The matters taken up in the said meetings are contained in the SEC Form 20 is definitive information statement and also published in our website. Is there any motion from the floor?
I am Marie Lorbis, shareholder of Consumer Fund and in Philippine Index Fund. Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of the minutes of the shareholders meetings held on June 19, 2019 for FAMI funds.
I am Lloyd Laurilia, stockholder of Consumer Fund. I second the motion.
There being a motion duly made and seconded, and there being no objection for the approval of the minutes of the annual stockholders meeting of the FAMI funds held on June 19, 2019, said minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is the annual report to the stockholders. Ms. Karen Liza M. Roa, FAMI President, will now render the report on operations and financial conditions and the FAMI Fund's performance in 2019. Ma'am Karen.
Thank you, Brother Manny. Let me just share my screen. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, my name is Karen Roa. I am the president of First Metro Asset Management and here to provide you with a report of operations as of 2019 and to put you up to speed also with regard to what has occurred for the first half of 2020. Okay, so I will provide you with an executive summary, some financial highlights, the fund performance of each of the funds, and then I will pass you on to our investment head, Mr. Edser Trinidad, for the capital market outlook. So, shall we begin? Okay. So, just a quick executive summary for the 6 months of 2020. Despite the pandemic, we have been able to generate exponential sales growth to the tune of about 1.1 billion in gross sales, which is the highest over the last 3 years. And that is attributable to increased awareness of investments by our shareholders and those also that are looking to take advantage of the market volatility to be able to reap some returns. That is gross sales. For the first 5 months of this year, we have been able to generate a positive net sales. That's from February to June 2020. We have also strengthened our partnership with the Metro Bank branches, both in the Metro Manila area and also this MIN area. So what that means is that we are being supported by the Metro Bank branches and they are aware of our presence and have been very supportive of our funds. We have likewise increased marketing activities and seminars, therefore generating higher visibility and awareness. And later on, I'll show you our social media track record over the first 6 months. We've also increased payment gateways. We are now on GCash, 7-Eleven, BDO and BPI bills payment facilities. This allows our shareholders to access our funds in far more various ways than previous. Okay. We've added a team in our VisMin area. So that will increase our presence within the Vismin areas. Okay. And I'm happy to report that despite the pandemic, we have been able to operate 100% work from home with no interruption whatsoever. Okay. With regard to our fund performance, we have generated consistent top-ranking fund performance across equity funds, resulting in better than benchmark results and placing us in the top half, if not top quartile, for our equity and fixed income funds versus mutual fund competitors and also UITF. Early this year, we relaunched our first Metro Consumer Fund into a more consumer-focused fund. So previously, it's always been a consumer fund, but right now what we have been able to do is tweak it a little bit more so that the theme is more consistent all throughout the fund, the portfolio. We've also restructured our first Metro ETF, resulting into less expenses in the share creation, so making it more affordable to our investors. Just to provide you a little bit of some visibility as far as what the organization has been doing during the last 6 months as a result of the COVID, our response has been to communicate more, equip our people more, engage and monitor. So as you'll see, these are the some of the activities that we've been able to do over the last 7 months. Some financial highlights of each of the funds. Okay. For the Save and Learn Equity Fund, okay, as of 2019, December 31, year-end 2019, the total assets of Save and Learn Equity Fund is 4,142,303,520. That is the total size of Save and Learn as of December 31, 2019. And it generated for the full year 1.07%. The NAV PS, or net asset value per share, is at 5.3283. As a result of the market volatility for the first 6 months of the year, we ended the first half with a total asset size of 3,457,559,206 and generating a return of negative 18.25 with a net asset value of 4.3557. For the Save and Learn Fixed Income Fund, as of year-end 2019, total size is 609,311,479. As of June 30, 2020, this had increased to 1,664,038,566. The return for full year 2019 was at 6.97. For the first half of 2020, the return has generated is 3.91%. Net asset value has likewise increased from 2.3591 to 2.4514. That is for the Save and Learn Fixed Income Fund. For the Save and Learn Balance Fund, the size as of year-end 2019 was at 1,586,008,519. Whereas for first half, June 30, 2020, this had declined to 1,440,336,932. Year-to-date return for the full year 2019 was at 3.50%, whereas for the first half of 2020, ending June 30, the return is at negative 7.32%. Net asset value is 2.6315, ending December 31, 2019, whereas as of June 30, 2020, NAVPS is at 2.4388. For the Save and Learn Money Market Fund, total asset size as of year-end 2019 was at 421,870,995. This had increased as of June 30, 2020 to 566,335,018. Okay. The year-to-date return for 2019 full year was at 3.30, whereas for the first 6 months of 2020, it is at 1.48%. I will show you the performance of each of these funds in a little bit so that you can compare it to the benchmark and you can likewise compare it to the peers. The Save and Learn Philippine Index Fund had a total size as of year-end 2019 of 61,955,211. As of June 30, 2020, it stood at 55,873,861. The year-to-date return for full year 2019 was at 2.06%, whereas for the first half of 2020, it stood at negative 19.22%. The net asset value year-end last year was 0.8536, whereas today it is at 0.6895. Our first Metro Consumer Fund, the total asset size as of year-end 2019 was 493,376,610. As of June 30, 2020, it stood at 391,913,006. The year-to-date return, full year 2019, was at 3.51%, whereas for the first 6 months of this year, it was at negative 20.23. Net asset value was at 0.8493, whereas for the first 6 months ending June 30, NAV PS was at 0.6775. Our Save and Learn Dollar Bond Fund, which is denominated in US dollars, stands at a total asset as of year-end, $5,170,007 US dollars, whereas for as of June 30, 2020, this had increased to $8,636,442 million. Year-to-date return, full year last year was 4.03, whereas the full 6 months return 2020 stood at 0.39%. NAV PS is at 0.0258 year-end versus 0.0260 for the first 6 months of the year. Asia Focus Equity Fund stands at 172,945,287. My apologies, this is actually in pesos. And today it stands as of June 30. This is at 5,233,416. The year-to-date return is at 0.53% as of end of last year versus June 30's return of 3.21. NAV PS is at 69.58 versus NAV PS June 30 of 0.4048. The first Metro Equity Traded Fund, okay, total assets was at 1,667,603,256. As of June 30, it stood at 1,583,868,583 pesos. Year-to-date return last year, full year, was at 5.61 versus for the first 6 months of 2020, it's generating a return of negative 19.87. NAV PS is at 116.95 year-end 2019 versus 93.7199 for as of June 30, 2020. Moving on, allow me to give you a summary of the fund performance of each of the funds. Okay, let me just walk you through this. The stock-laced funds that are actively managed are Save and Learn Equity Fund and the First Metro Consumer Fund. Okay, okay. As of July 30, 2020, the year-to-date return of the Save and Learn Equity Fund was at negative 21.37, and the First Metro Consumer Fund was at negative 22.75. Okay. The benchmark, however, for those both funds is the Philippine Stock Exchange Index, which at that same time was generating a return of negative 24.14. Therefore, as you can see that while the market has declined tremendously, okay, we have been able to outperform the benchmark to almost 200 to 300 basis points versus the Philippine Stock Exchange Index. Meanwhile, if you compare that to the other peers or our competitors in the market, in the mutual fund space, there are 13 mutual fund providers in the actively managed equity-laced funds, of which our very own Save and Learn Fund ranks as second, and our Consumer Metro Fund is ranked number 4 out of 13. Happy to note, however, that as we speak, our Consumer Fund has been ranked number 1 over the last maybe 2 months. This is as of July 30, however. Okay. For the index funds, or what we call passively managed funds, we have 2. We have the Save and Learn Philippine Index Fund, and we have the First Metro ETF. Okay. As I said, the Stock Exchange Index generating a return of negative 24. Our Save and Learn Philippine Index Fund is at negative 22.93, so better than the market. And likewise for the FM ETF at negative 23.44, also less negative than the benchmark. Okay. If we compare it to the competitors on those that are passively managed or index funds, among all of the mutual funds out there, the Save and Learn Philippine Index Fund is ranked as number 1 as of July 30, and the First Metro ETF is ranked as second also as of July 30. And once again, happy to note that we've been able to hold up over the last 3 months following July 30. For the balanced funds, we have 2 balanced funds, Save and Learn Balanced Fund Inc., okay, generating a return of negative 9.19, okay, ranked 6 out of 13 players in the market, and our Save and Learn Focus Dynamic Fund generating a return of negative 19.78, and unfortunately lagging amongst all of our peers. The benchmark, which is comprised of 65% the Philippine Stock Exchange Index plus 35% of the BPI Philippine Government Bond 1 to 5 years, that's a composite index, is generating a return of negative 13.93. Therefore, our Save and Learn Balanced Fund is almost 400 basis points better than the benchmark. Okay. Our, okay. Our peso bond funds. We have 1 peso bond fund, and that is called Save and Learn Fixed Income Fund, and it's generating a return of 4.03%. And the benchmark is the BPI Philippine Government Bond 1 to 5 year index, generating a return of 5.05. If we take a look at the ranking versus peers, we are middle of the pack. Out of 11, we stand at 4th. The foreign currency securities, for foreign currency securities, we have also 1, which is the Save and Learn Dollar Bond Fund, also a fixed income fund. It's generating a return of 2.71%. And if you compare it to its competitors in the market, where there are 8, we rank second. The money market fund, meanwhile, is Save and Learn Money Market Fund. This was a fund that was launched in the beginning of 2019 with a net asset value currently at 500 million. The benchmark is the BPI Philippine Government Money Market Index. It's generating a return of 1.64 versus the benchmark of 2.26 and ranked third. Okay. Okay. Once again, these are just the returns. This is the entire industry. I earlier provided the ranking versus competitors. These next few slides will just identify who those competitors are. Okay. So this is for the actively managed equity funds. The top table is for the index tracking funds. The bottom table is for the balanced funds. So you see who those competitors are and what the returns are. Okay. This is for the fixed income funds. For the dollar bond funds, and for the money market funds at the bottom. Okay. Earlier, I mentioned that we have increased our marketing and social media broadcast so that we can increase awareness. And this next slide will just show you also the overall increase in reach, social media reach, which we've been able to generate over the last 7 months, an increase of 21%. That is measured by determining how many followers, how many subscribers, or how many members we have in the total, so in various social media platforms. So once again, if I may, please follow us in the First Metro Asset Management Facebook page. Twitter, it's at First Metro Asset. Instagram, First Metro Asset Management. YouTube, we have a number of videos and broadcasts and podcasts on YouTube. Viber also, there is a public Viber, First Metro Asset, and also for MailChimp, which is an email broadcast platform, I believe. Okay. That ends my, I think that ends my presentation. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pass you on to our investment head. Thank you.
Before Ed sir will come, I'd like to thank Ma'am Roa for the report. Due to logistical limitations of the meeting conducted virtually, open forum discussion will not be possible during the meeting. However, a stockholder will be given opportunity to raise any relevant question or express an appropriate comment limited to the annual report by sending an email to asm@fami.com.ph. Any relevant questions or comment received via email shall be properly acknowledged, noted, and addressed accordingly. Mr. Edser Trinidad, First Vice President and Head of the Investment and Research Unit of FAMI, will now render the report on market outlook. Let's welcome Mr. Trinidad.
Good afternoon. 2020 will be recorded as one of the most challenging years in our human history. With just a COVID-19 emanating from Wuhan, the disease has spread globally and it has affected the global economy. And the Philippines is not spared with that pandemic. So for the rest of the year, we expect that there will be more pain before gain. We expect that the macroeconomy will remain lackluster in third quarter with signs of recovery to begin in fourth quarter. The extended quarantine amidst the high COVID-19 infection rate prevents the economy to fully open. And this is the reason why the recovery is a bit slow. With the continuing high infection rate, Consumer confidence is expected to remain low, and this should affect consumption. And lastly, looking at the OFW remittances, weak OFW remittances may also lead to weak spending. Foreign investors, which has been selling the market for the past couple of months, will continue to stay on the sidelines as they await for some catalyst. For on the equity side, we expect that the market will remain volatile as it lacks a strong catalyst to really push up the market. Corporate earnings, we believe have already seen the bottom in 2Q, although we expect the third quarter earnings will remain lower year on year, but we should expect a recovery sequentially due to a gradual reopening of the economy. While earning estimates have been downgraded, weak share price have made valuations look reasonable. We expect that the market may bounce back in fourth quarter as the economic activity may slowly return to normal due to easing restrictions. On the fixed income side, the supportive policies introduced by the BSP and the government have led to yields to reach new record lows. And as the economy recovers from the pandemic, overall monetary conditions remain accommodative despite a near-term outward pressure on bond yields due to hefty government spending or borrowing that are slated for 2021. And what are the basically possible upside surprises on the market? A potential strong liquidity flow. A global market is flush with liquidity, and equity markets in the developed markets and North Asia markets have already reached at an all-time high, and we expect that there might be some shifting of funds from the developed markets to the emerging markets. And lastly, an aggressive stimulus program by the government should bring forth some confidence back in our market. Equities volatility have been volatile during the past couple of months. From a low of 4,623 in last March, at least we've seen the market bounce back strongly to about more than 6,500. However, because of the continuing high infection rate, the market has been very volatile from there on. And so right now, we expect that this behavior may continue to happen until at least for the third quarter. Foreign investments continue to be on a net selling activity. As you can see on this chart, it has been on a downward trend. In total, about $1.8 billion worth of foreign money had left the market in the Philippine Stock Exchange. And due to this, the foreign ownership on companies are now on an 8-year low. Because of those factors, the Philippines is one of the worst performing markets. And as you can see here from our list, it sits on the bottom. However, the performance of our currency is one of the best performing currencies in the region. And this is the reason why, in terms of dollar terms, our losses in dollar terms have been lower than local currency. And this allows us to at least be not be one of the worst performing market in terms of US dollar terms. Looking at the corporate earnings, because of the lockdown that happened in second quarter, corporate earnings have been badly affected. As can be seen on this chart, most of the earnings have recorded a double-digit decline as compared to the same period last year. And even though analysts have been expecting a worse number, most of the earnings are basically below the market consensus. Again, this is another sheet that shows you the results of for the rest of the companies. So the high COVID-19 cases has really slowed down our economy, and cases have continued to increase during the first part of August, and that has resulted in forcing the government to impose an MECQ last August. And due to this, because of the high infection rate, that's the reason why an MECQ was implemented. However, after doing a lockdown for 2 weeks, we've seen some improvement in our daily cases, and we've seen a downward trend. And hopefully, this will continue. So there has been a lot of, even looking at the positivity rate, it has also declined from a high of about 14% to now about 8.4% as of September 8th. So why is this important? That we need to keep our infection rate low, because if infection rate will continue to be high, then consumer confidence will remain low. And as can be seen on this chart or on this slide, consumer confidence has declined significantly as of first quarter during the onset of the COVID-19 case. And we expect that the latest survey in terms of consumer confidence will worsen. And this data is quite important because our economy, it's a consumption-driven economy, and about 60 to 70% of our economy is being driven by private consumption. And this is quite important that consumer confidence should rebound in order to improve spending, and therefore will also help our economy. Considering that we have one of the most, I think, restrictive lockdown globally, our economy is not, seems that bad relative to our neighbors who have only implemented a very loose restriction towards its population. And as you can see, while our GDP growth is about negative 16.5 as of second quarter, other countries fared worse than us. And considering that, we've had the most restrictive lockdown globally, our economy is not as bad if you are going to look at, or if you are going to compare this with our neighbors. And if you also look at the monetary stimulus that has been provided by our central bank, it is also one of the most aggressive in the region. Our central bank has been very supportive in helping our economy getting back on its feet. And as you can see here, we've already cut about 175 basis points in terms of our policy rate. And even aside from this, they've also lowered the required reserve ratio on the banks. And that has also, also one of the main reasons why we've seen our yields continue to decline. And in terms of our ability, I think, to sustain or to fund our growth, we believe that our country still has the flexibility to fund any plans to pump prime the economy, as debt to GDP is still better than most of our neighbors. And as you can see here on the chart, our debt to GDP of about 39% as of 2019 is basically far better as compared with most of our neighbors. Looking at the outlook for 2021, the observers all agree that 2021 will be a better year, as they expect a healthy economic growth for 2021. However, unfortunately for 2020, they are all expecting that our economy will contract between a low of -2 to a high of -11%. However, if you look at 2021, a big portion of the observers all agree that we are looking at a potential strong rebound coming in 2021. In terms of inflation, the higher oil prices, although it has been increasing for the past couple of weeks or months, we've seen that there was a limited effect on inflation. And as you can see here, the latest inflation print was recorded about 2.4 as of August. This should at least allow us a good indication that because of the low inflation, the BSP can sustain its accommodative efforts to support the economy. Looking at the valuation, as I mentioned, there has been a lot of cuts in terms of earnings estimates. Thankfully, if you are going to look at the share price, the market has gone down significantly, and that has allowed valuation to at least stabilize in terms of PE. Looking at the current valuation, we now stand at about 15.5 times on 21 earnings. That is slightly below the 20-year average of about 16 times PE. So while our market looks quite reasonable, but it is considered not cheap because we're only trading slightly below the 20-year average. This chart, shows all the major events that occurred since 1988. And as you can see, every time there's a major event, market tends to decline significantly. However, the market also tends to bounce back strongly in a year or two from that event. And this chart shows all these major events that has affected our markets, and it has, as you can see here, it is also followed by strong growth, a strong recovery after a year or two. So hopefully, this trend will also be the case this time around. Looking at the fixed income market, the yields have remained low because of the accommodative policies given by the central bank. It has, as you can see here, policy rates have been cut from 4% to what currently we have is about 2.25. In addition, the triple R has also been reduced from 14 to current level of about 12%. And this has basically a good indication that the BSP is really proactive in boosting the economic activity. And that has resulted in lower yields. And in fact, the yields have reached to new historic lows. As you can see, during the pre-ECQ, during the ECQ implementation, which happened in March, the rates had peaked to this level, and basically during the pre-ECQ, it really has, as you can see here, the belly has and the long end of our instruments have really spiked up because of after the ECQ was announced. However, because of the accommodative policies provided by the BSP, the current rates have reached to new lows. And this chart also shows you the whole instruments, and we've seen a drastic decline. And this is the reason why yields have gone down, and that has provided fixed income instruments with attractive returns. Looking at the holdings of our investments of our funds, for this first Metro Save and Learn Equity Fund, our investments are mostly on blue chip names, which have a strong track record and are dominant in their respective markets. And we believe that these companies will be able to survive and even flourish once the economy recovers. And as you can see, as of September 8th, we have an equity exposure of about 87%, and the rest are held in either cash or in time deposits. Looking at our balance fund, this is the equity portion. We have about equity exposure about 40%, and about 51% are in fixed income securities and cash. And our top holdings for the equity portion are also the same as what we have in our Save and Learn Equity Fund. This is the holdings of our first Metro Save and Learn Equity Consumer Fund. And here, as you can see, most of our holdings are pure plays, pure consumer play. And we are, as what Karen had mentioned, the First Metro Consumer Fund is now the top performing mutual fund across the equity funds. And lastly, looking at the fixed income fund, here's our portfolio mix, and a big portion of our mix are in government securities, and the rest are in corporate bonds. And as you can see here, our top holdings are mostly government securities. And lastly, this is our composition or top holdings for our money market fund. And the portfolio mix is equally split between fixed deposit, corporate bonds, and government securities. And for our dollar bond fund, there's about 7% or majority of our holdings are in Philippine sovereign bonds. That ends my presentation.
We now move to the next item in the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Trinidad. We now move to the next item in the agenda, which is the ratification of all acts and resolutions of the Board of Directors and Management and all committees for the fiscal year 2019 of FAMI funds, including the following. A, renewal of the FAMI funds management distribution agreement with FAMI. Is there any motion from the floor?
I'm Ingrid Cruz, proxy for Mary Pines Keres Antonio, stockholder of Salef, FMCF, and Salbaf. Mr. Chairman, I move that all acts, transactions, and resolutions of the Board of Directors and Management and all committees of the FAMI funds for the fiscal year 2019, including the renewal of the management and distribution agreement with FAMI and the minutes of meeting of the board and board committees be ratified and confirmed.
I am Regina Resurrection, stockholder of FMCF, and proxy for Colegio de Santa Monica de Angat, stockholder of SALFIF. I second the motion.
There being a motion duly made and seconded to ratify all acts and resolutions of the Board of Directors, management, and all committees of the FAMI funds for the fiscal year 2019, including the renewal of the management and distribution agreement and the minutes of meetings of the board and the committees of the respective funds, the motion is carried. May I request the chairman of FMCF, Mr. Eduardo Esmenjola, to present the next item pertaining to the First Metro Consumer Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move to the next item on the agenda, which is the ratification of the amendment of the fund's name from First Metro Consumer Fund on MSCI Philippines IMI Incorporated to First Metro Consumer Fund Incorporated, and revision of portfolio constituents and investment guideline and objective of the First Metro Consumer Fund. The amendment was approved by the board on May 22 this year, 2020. We are submitting these amendments to the stockholders for ratification. For the amendment of the articles of incorporation, the vote of at least 2/3 of the stockholders is required. Is there any motion from the floor?
I'm Ruth Chaneco, stockholder of SALEF and FMCF. Mr. Chairman, I move for the ratification of the amendment of fund's name and revision of portfolio constituents and investment guideline and objective of FMCF as approved by the board.
I am Emmanuel Lagrimas, stockholder of FMCF. I second the motion.
Okay, there being a motion duly made and seconded for the ratification of the amendment of the fund's name and revision of the portfolio constituents and investment guideline and objective of FMCF, and there being no objections, the motion is carried.
Thank you, Chairman Menjola. May I request the chairman of the Money Market Fund, Ms. Helen U. Fargas, to present the next item for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move to the next item in the agenda, which is the revision of portfolio constituents and investment guideline and objective of First Metro's Save and Learn Money Market Fund as follows. Investment objective to the fund's investment objective is to seek stable returns by investing in fixed income instruments or investment in a portfolio with an average portfolio duration of 1 year or less. The amendment was approved by the board on August 5, 2019. We are submitting these amendments to the stockholders for ratification. For the ratification of the revision of portfolio constituents and investment guideline and objective, the vote of at least the majority of the stockholders is required. Is there any motion from the floor?
Madam Chairman, I am Regina Resurrection and I move for the ratification of the revision of portfolio constituents and investment guideline and objective of Save and Learn Money Market Fund, which was approved by the board.
Madam Chairman, I am Marie Lorbis and I second the motion.
There being a motion duly made and seconded for the ratification of the revision of portfolio constituents and investment guidelines and objective of Save and Learn Money Market Fund, and there being no objections, the motion is carried.
Thank you, Chairman Fargas. May I request the president of Save and Learn Dollar Bond Fund, Mr. Menjola, to present the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move to the next item in the agenda, which is the revision of the prospectus with respect to the investment objective / structure in sales load fee of SALDF. The following are the revisions. Sorry, let me just we are submitting this revision to the prospectus to the prospectus to the stockholders for ratification. For the approval of the revision, stated vote of at least the majority of the stockholders is required. Is there any motion from the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Ruth Chaneco, and I move for the ratification of the revisions of the prospectus with respect to the investment objective or structure and sales load fee of Saldabaf.
Mr. Chairman, I am Lloyd Laurilia and I second the motion.
Okay, there being a motion duly made and seconded to ratify the revision of the investment objective, structure, in sales load fee of SAL-DF or Dollar Bond Fund, and there being no objections, the motion is carried.
Thank you, Chairman Menjola. Next in the agenda is the election of the board members of the Board of Directors of the FAMI funds to serve for the year 2020-2021. Mr. Michael G. Say, Chairman of the Nomination Committee of SALFIN, will now explain the nomination procedure under current SEC rules on behalf of the FAMI funds. The rules apply to all the funds.
Mr. Chairman, in compliance with the requirements of Securities Exchange Commission, as well as the FAMI Mutual Funds Manual on Corporate Governance, the nomination committee of each of the FAMI Mutual Funds was tasked with the review and evaluation of the qualification of all persons nominated to the board. Pursuant to this mandate, the nomination committee of each of the funds reviewed the qualification of the following nominees to the board of directors and certifies that based on the records, they have all the qualifications and none of the disqualifications prescribed by law and regulations. The list of nominees for each of the FAMI funds is contained in the definitive information statement sent to all stockholders and submitted to the SEC prior to today's meeting. The nominees for the First Metro Save and Learn Philippine Index Fund, Inc. are as follows: Mr. Michael G. Say, Mr. Robert T. Yu, Ms. Helen U. Fargas, Father Roderick Salazar Jr., Mr. Jose Alan I. Arellano, Father Roderick C. Salazar Jr., SBD, and Mr. Jose Alan L. Arellano are nominees for independent directors.
The nominees for the First Metro Consumer Fund, Inc. are as follows: Mr. Eduardo S. Mendiola, Mr. Robert T. Yu, Ms. Helen U. Fargas, Ms. Rodora Angela F. Ferrer, Father Rafael K. Eloriaga. Ms. Ferrer and Father Eloriaga are the nominees for independent directors. The nominees for the First Metro Save and Learn Equity Fund Incorporated are as follows: Brother Manuel V. De Leon, Dr. Victor A. Abola, Mr. Eduardo S. Mendiola, Father Rafael K. Eloriaga, and Mr. Edgar B. Sulilapsi. Father Eloriaga and Mr. Sulilapsi are the nominees for independent directors. The nominees for the First Metro Save and Learn Fixed Income Fund are as follows: Brother Manuel B. De Leon, Dr. Victor A. Abola, Mr. Eduardo S. Mendiola, Father Rafael K. Eloriaga, and Mr. Edgar B. Sulilapsi. Father Eloriaga and Mr. Sulilapsi are the nominees for independent directors. The nominees for the First Metro Save and Learn Balance Fund, Inc. are as follows: Brother Manuel De Leon, Dr. Victor A. Abola, Mr. Eduardo S. Mendiola, Ms. Bernadette M. Nepomuceno, Ms. Rodora Angela F. Ferrer, and Ms. Bernadette Nepomuceno and Ms. Rodora Angela F. Ferrer are the nominees for independent directors. The nominees for the First Metro Save and Learn Dollar Bond Fund Incorporated are Brother Manuel B. De Leon, Mr. Eduardo S. Mendiola, Father Roderick C. Salazar Jr., Ms. Bernadette Nepomuceno, Ms. Rodora Angela F. Ferrer. Father Roderick C. Salazar Jr. and Ms. Nepomuceno and Ms. Ferrer are the nominees for independent directors. The nominees for the First Metro Asia Focus Equity Fund Incorporated are as follows. Brother Manuel V. De Leon, Mr. Eduardo S. Mendiola, Ms. Ellen U. Vargas, Father Roderick C. Salazar Jr., Ms. Bernadette M. Nepomuceno, Father C. Salazar Jr., and Ms. Bernadette M. Nepomuceno are the nominees for independent directors.
Mr. Ed Carion. Hello.
Mr. Carion.
Ms. Helen Vargas, may we request you to read the nominees for the money market fund
Okay.
if
The
Mr. Carion is not available. Go ahead, please.
Okay. The nominees for the First Metro Save and Learn Money Market Fund, Inc. Ms. Helen U. Vargas, Mr. Eduardo R. Carion, Mr. Edgar B. Solilapsi, Father Rafael Eloriaga, CM, Mr. Jose Alan Arellano, Father Roderick Salazar Jr., SVD, Mr. Edgar Solilapsi, Father Rafael Eloriaga, CM, Mr. Jose Alan Arellano, and Father Roderick C. Salazar Jr., SVD. They are the nominees for independent directors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any motion from the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the nominees enumerated by the nomination committee chairman or member be declared elected to the respective board of directors of the FAMI funds so named.
I second the motion.
Let it be on record that upon nominations duly made and there being no other nominations, the stockholders of the FAMI funds enumerated by Mr. Michael G. Say, Mr. Eduardo S. Mendiola, and Mr. Eduardo R. Carion were unanimously elected to serve on the respective board. We are very grateful to our incumbent directors for their continuing invaluable service to the board. Finally, on behalf of the board, may I express gratitude to our valued stockholders for your steadfast loyalty over the years and for your faith and confidence. While unusual times are upon us, we shall, with your support, face the challenges with hope, anchored in divine providence and with faith in the company's long-standing values and dedication and hard work. It is our honor and privilege to serve you and this esteemed institution. The next item in the agenda is the appointment of an independent external auditor for the fiscal year 2020. The respective board of directors of the FAMI funds in its special meeting held on May 22, 2020 had approved the appointment of the SGV and Company as the independent external auditor. We now submit this for your ratification. For the ratification of the appointment of the SGV and Company, the majority vote of the stockholders is required. Is there any motion from the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the appointment of CISIP Gores Velayo and Company as independent external auditor of the FAMI funds be ratified.
I second the motion.
Then, there being a motion duly made and seconded, the appointment of the SGV and Company as independent external auditor of the FAMI funds for the fiscal year 2020 is hereby ratified. Are there any other matters to be taken up?
Mr. Chairman, we have some items for the approval of the stockholders, which will be presented by Ms. Karen Roa.
May we have the okay. Thank you. Isa, do you have the other matter? Thank you. Okay. Please, Mr. Chairman, we would like to request, as part of the other matters, for the revisions of the benchmark for SALEF from the PSEI to also the PSEI, but inclusive of Metrobank, and also for the sales load for a maximum also of 3%. Okay. Next. Okay. For the fixed income fund, we would also like to request for an amendment of the benchmark from the 5-year PDSTF 5 plus 1% to a composite of 60% Bloomberg Philippine Sovereign Bond Index plus 30% S&P Philippine Corporate Bond Index plus 10% Philippine 30-day savings rate. And also for an amendment of the sales load to reflect a maximum of 2%. Next slide. Okay. For the Save and Learn Balance Fund, we would also like to request for an amendment of the benchmark from a composite of 60% PSEI plus 66.5% plus 40% MART to the benchmark of 50% PSEI plus 30% Bloomberg Index plus 15% S&P Corporate Index plus 5% liquidity. And also for an amendment of the sales load to reflect a maximum of 3%. Next. For the First Metro Consumer Fund, the benchmark was previously MSCI plus Consumer Stock Index. We would like to request for an amendment to the benchmark to reflect a FAMI Consumer Index. And also a sales load revision from a maximum of 5% to a maximum of 3% instead. Next. For the money market fund, also a change in benchmark from the 30-day special savings account to the benchmark of the Bloomberg Philippine Sovereign Bond Index. I think, Mr. Chairman, we submit the changes in the benchmark and sales for each of the funds mentioned above as stated for the approval of the stockholders.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the revision of benchmark and sales load of SALEF, SALFIF, SALBUF, and FMCF, and the revision of benchmark of money market fund be approved.
I second the motion.
There being a motion duly made and seconded, the revision of the benchmark and sales load of SALEF, SALFIF, SALBUP, and FMCF, and the revision of the benchmark of the Save and Learn Money Market Fund is hereby approved. Are there any other matters to be taken up?
Mr. Chairman, for SALFIN, there are no other matters for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, for the other mutual funds, there are no other matters for consideration of the stockholders.
Stockholders may raise any relevant questions or express an appropriate comment limited to the agenda by sending an email to asm@fami.com.ph. Any relevant questions or comment received via email shall be properly acknowledged, noted, and addressed accordingly. If there are no other matters for the approval of the stockholders, we can now adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the meeting of FAMI Mutual Funds be adjourned.
I second the motion.
There being no other matters to consider, the year 2020 annual stockholders meeting of the FAMI Funds is hereby adjourned. Thank you for your participation.
And that ends our discussion for this year's annual stockholders meeting of the FAMI Mutual Funds. Again, you may send relevant questions or comments limited to the annual report or the agenda by sending an email to asm@fami.com.ph. Thank you and have a pleasant afternoon. To our board of directors, just a reminder that we have an organizational meeting approximately 15 minutes from now. Thank you.
Picture yourself 10 years from now. If you set aside 5,000 pesos per month 10 years ago without investing it, you would easily have 600,000 pesos today. Today, you're looking forward to your new car, new house, or a dream vacation. Because of inflation, your purchasing power for that 600,000 pesos would actually be worth a lot less today. But if you invested your money in a mutual fund, not only would you have maintained your money's purchasing power, your money would be worth more today. For information, visit the FAMI website. Picture yourself 10 years from now. If you set aside 5,000 pesos per month 10 years ago without investing it, you would easily have 600,000 pesos today. Today, you're looking forward to your new car, new house, or a dream vacation. Because of inflation, your purchasing power for that 600,000 pesos would actually be worth a lot less today. But if you invested your money in a mutual fund, not only would you have maintained your money's purchasing power, your money would be worth more today. For information, visit the FAMI website.